Welcome to DeFi Real. My name is Brian Rose, and this is our brand new program covering everything known as DeFi, or decentralized finance, which is a $9 trillion marketplace. And today, I'm going to be talking about how to profit from what I'm calling the greatest dislocation of wealth in human history. In fact, Forbes magazine recently said, quote, "This will shift the structure of the whole financial system at a macroeconomic level." I was recently quoted saying decentralized finance, or DeFi, is already revolutionizing the world of finance. You just don't know it yet. And today, I want to spend the next few minutes talking about this incredible phenomenon, and also I want to announce the creation of our very own DeFi Academy, where you can learn this market from the best in the business. More about that later, but let's get started right now. You might be saying, Brian, what is DeFi? I've never heard of this before. What does it mean? Well, it's short for decentralized finance. The D is the decentralized, the Fi is from finance, and it's basically this. It's a blockchain-based form of finance that doesn't rely on central financial intermediaries, such as brokerages, exchanges, or banks, or any traditional financial service companies. And this is important because I worked for these institutions for nearly 2 decades. I was a banker, I was a broker, and we spent our entire day finding creative ways to rip the customer off. That means you, that means corporations, that means countries. That's all we did every single day. And so that's why DeFi is so important, because DeFi is the future. And it utilizes smart contracts on blockchains, the most common being Ethereum, where applications known as dApps, which are decentralized applications, perform financial functions on digital ledgers called blockchains. And this is a technology that was first utilized by Bitcoin, but now it's evolved much, much more. And I want to talk about that today. This concept of a quote-unquote open blockchain means that everything is public and everything is transparent, including the fees. And this is what Wall Street and the City of London get away with murder every single day. It's the fees, because you don't know where they are. And that means that traditional banking, business as usual, is going to be completely disrupted by DeFi, with the customer, you, and the speed of innovation being the big winners. And let me repeat that. The customer, which is you and me, and the speed of innovation is the big winners when it comes to DeFi. Now, it's estimated the current centralized finance, or CeFi sector, extracts over $9.1 trillion annually from the global economy. Now, just to be clear, that's more money than the utilities, communication services, and real estate sectors combined. So real estate, utilities, communication services, add all that up, and finance still extracts more money from you and me. And most of this, again, as I said, is unseen from the public. It's unseen from corporations, even nation states. There's at least $9 trillion annually just waiting to be disrupted and redistributed on a mass scale, which means the following. No more shady middlemen. No more bankers ripping out huge spreads because of a lack of transparency. No more banks keeping their customers in the dark when it comes to dangerous risk exposure. And no more bankers ripping off hard-working people like you and me from our savings, our mortgages, our car loans, our school loans, our investment portfolios, our insurance, our retirement accounts, our trusts, our wills. Everything you would typically go to a financial institution for has now changed. And DeFi and the blockchain are going to completely revolutionize the way we as consumers understand and interact with our own money, which is why myself and my entire team here are going all in on this technology and this infrastructure. And we plan on spending the next 10 years teaching, broadcasting, understanding, educating, investing in, profiting from, and transforming this incredible new marketplace. I couldn't be more excited. We've been working on this for weeks and months, and I want to answer as many questions as I can for you today. So let's get started. First of all, you're probably saying, Brian, is DeFi the same as trading cryptocurrencies? And the answer is no. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are more analogous to an asset like gold, whereas DeFi is really the infrastructure like the global financial system. So again, gold prices and cryptocurrency prices go up and they go down. They go up and they go down, sometimes a lot. But the global financial system always stays present, and it usually gets better. We've had credit cards, we've had ATM machines, we have online banking. It usually progresses, whereas the assets themselves go up and down. And I always like to make this analogy, and some of my guests on London Real have made this analogy. In the dot-com boom in the year 2000, I was in New York City. I was the CFO of a dot-com startup called luxuryfinder.com, and it ended up being the worst year financially for tech stocks because all the tech stocks took a dive. We lost $1 trillion worth of value in the world, and yet that was actually the internet's biggest year because more people adopted this technology, more people started using it, more people started using search engines and buying products on it. So again, the price of something doesn't always affect the progress of the infrastructure. And this is a really important point. And again, today I'm going to try to find the simplest way to explain these things to you as possible. I've been in this business and technology and finance and banking and even crypto and DeFi for many years. And I want to try to explain this to you because the financial system that you and I know has been centralized for the past few thousand years. And that means that its rate of innovation and improvement, it's very slow compared to the quantum leaps currently happening right now in decentralized finance or DeFi. In fact, this space right now, DeFi, is experiencing year-on-year growth of 88 times. That means it's grown by 88 times in 1 year. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my history on the planet. Even when I was in the dot-com startup boom, we didn't see something growing by 88 times. It's just unheard of. And that's the power of this space. And so, again, you might be asking yourself, well, Brian, first of all, who are you and why do you know so much about this space? Well, a little background on me. My name's Brian Rose. I'm the founder of London Real. And 30 years ago, I was actually one of the pioneers of some complex derivative financial instruments on Wall Street that would go on to revolutionize finance. And I still remember being there back in 1993 on the trading floor of Bankers Trust. It was right next to the World Trade Center. And I was working on these super complex financial derivatives. And they had just recruited me from MIT because that's where they found these rocket scientists. And they found engineers like me and physicists and scientists. And they got our brain power and they plugged us into these financial services. And we started cooking up the most financial complex products that had ever been seen by the market. We made things that no one had ever conceived of in their wildest dreams. And it was incredible to be a part of that. And I saw so much. And what I'm seeing right now in DeFi reminds me of what I saw 30 years ago in the derivatives market of Wall Street. And I want to talk about that today. And so again, a little bit of background on me. I'm from California originally. I love science and engineering. I went to MIT to study engineering. My first job was at Ford Motor Company. I went and worked in aerospace, but then I got seduced by money. I loved the place called Bankers Trust. And we were one of the best when it came to complex derivative financial instruments. And we could cook up pretty much anything you wanted. We could put it on balance sheet, off balance sheets. We traded digital options. We traded synthetic stocks. We traded everything under the sun. And it was incredible to be a part of that. And I thought that was a once in a lifetime phenomenon. Now, later I moved to London and I was involved in the beginning of the credit derivatives market here in London. I actually brokered one of the very first interdealer credit derivative swaps in 1997 in London. But I thought all of this was going to be a once in a lifetime experience. I thought I had seen really probably the very beginnings of a complex phenomenon in finance that would never be seen again. And it turns out I'm wrong. Because when I look into DeFi, I see the things I was doing 30 years ago happening in a matter of weeks and months. I see things that took the financial markets decades to create happening in short amounts of time. And it's because it's decentralized and anyone in the world can create these dApps. And so we're seeing incredible innovation and it's growing at a quantum rate. And that's why we've decided to go all in on this new technology. So let me put this in perspective because I see DeFi as ultimately being about freedom, your freedom to make your own choices and to really understand your own money better. And let me talk about my journey with freedom because about 10 years ago, I quit my job in the City of London as a credit derivatives broker, where I worked for a company called ICAP PLC, which was run by a gentleman who's now named Lord Spencer, and I worked there for a long time, and I made a lot of money in that business. But I got to a point in my life where I wanted to do something different, and I saw what the internet was bringing to the information industry, and I saw what was happening in podcasting and video streaming and YouTube, and I thought, you know what? I want to be a part of this. And so I started London Real back in 2011, and I wanted to be a part of this concept of how the internet was changing the whole game, much like it's changing finance today. It was democratizing information in the form of podcasting and YouTube, and I was excited by the limitless possibilities. So back then, as I'm doing today, I went all in on my independent broadcasting platform, London Real. I broadcast over 1,000 long-form conversations with some of the greatest minds on the planet. Our episodes have now been watched over 500 million times. And I got firsthand knowledge on what decentralized broadcasting meant. And it meant that I could innovate. It meant that I could do things differently than a television channel or a newspaper or all of these traditional centralized keepers of information. And we saw how that changed everything. Well, I believe the same thing is happening right now in finance. And so I want to talk about this today because I want you to be in on the ground floor of this incredible phenomenon, and DeFi is where it happens. So let me tell you a little bit about my own experience with DeFi and cryptocurrencies. So as I mentioned, on London Real, I spent the last 10 years speaking with over 1,000 of the most fascinating people on the planet. And guess what? Over the past 10 years, some of these issues came up. We talked about cryptocurrencies. We talked about DeFinance even when we didn't know we were talking about it. And so today I want to play for you a few clips of the early conversations around DeFi because it'll help us understand this space today and it'll help us see where it's going to go. And that's what I find really exciting. So back on May 16th of 2013, I hosted Max Keiser on my show. And Max Keiser at the time was in London. He was hosting his Keiser Report on Russia Today. And I had tweeted out saying, who knows something about Bitcoin? I got to an argument with Max and we were kind of fighting over Twitter. And I said, will the real Slim Shady please stand up? And finally, Max came over and we had this conversation about Bitcoin. On that same day, I bought 2 Bitcoin for 85 pounds each. Now, now they're trading much more than that. You can probably do the math. But I remember having a conversation with Max talking about the fact that there were nobody making markets in Bitcoin. It was purely if someone was buying or someone was selling, and that was hurting the liquidity of the market. And so I want to play for you this short video clip of me and Max talking about the lack of liquidity in Bitcoin and how we would need market makers to change the game. So here's that clip.
To it on that front.
And rough market price right now of a single Bitcoin?
It's 105, I think.
Dollars,
yeah,
right?
Actually, per dollar.
Okay. I own 2 Bitcoins. I'm not as rich as Max. But I bought them the other day. I got fleeced on an exchange that was buyers only. And I didn't even see a two-way market, even though I traded for so long. And I paid like 85 pounds for Bitcoin. I should have paid 71.
Well, no, the exchanges, I think, are the biggest vulnerable spot to the whole Bitcoin ecosystem. The Bitcoin protocol talks about how to mine Bitcoin. It doesn't talk about how to price a Bitcoin. Pricing Bitcoin, you need a market for that. And the market is, from my experience creating virtual markets, and I created the virtual specialist technology, I can see where you could, you have to create depth in the market. You have to create liquidity. You need a counterparty to this market, which you don't really have. Right now, the exchanges are just matching buyers and sellers. They don't make a market. And what I mean by that is that on the New York Stock Exchange, I can go down there and I can sell 10,000, 50,000 shares at the market guaranteed. Now, my price might not be great, but they will guarantee a price because if there's not enough of the volume to offset that trade, the specialist acts then as a principal,
right,
not just as a broker, and they go into their own inventory and they put their own capital at risk to make that trade happen.
And so Max made a really good point there because when I was on Wall Street, I would make markets on a regular basis, which means I would provide liquidity to other people. And that's the reason that those financial markets did so well. And so this was an early conversation knowing that Bitcoin, crypto, and DeFi would need to have market makers. And we've seen that happen today, and I want to talk about that more later. On this same conversation with Max, I started talking about Bitcoin derivatives. And again, I come from a background of derivatives, of understanding call options, put options, all of these things in a very intimate way because I traded these for so many years. And I said to Max that I believed that Bitcoin derivatives were the future and they would actually make it more liquid. And so this is me and Max having that first conversation about Bitcoin derivatives.
I have an important question. One of my Twitter guys hit me back and he said, Bitcoin will exist as a real and viable currency because derivatives aren't involved. And I tweeted back and said, okay, I promise to pay you in 2 days for a Bitcoin at a pre-approved price. That's a derivative. So are there going to be derivatives on Bitcoins? And is that the reason it will or won't succeed as a currency? Max?
Well, look at the price of silver for a second. What is the price of silver?
23 and
Or what's the price?
20.
What's the price of gold?
I don't know.
It was last time I checked, it was like 1460.
Okay, how do you know that? You
Because
know
there's an
that
exchange.
because you get the price from the futures exchange.
And Bloomberg, yeah.
You don't have a cash price for gold because there is no cash price of gold. We only know the futures price of gold.
Interesting.
We don't know what the cash price of gold is. We don't know what the cash price of silver price is. There's only the futures price. With the paper price, that's the price. So that's a derivative. We don't know what the underlying prices of gold.
And we don't
silver.
need to
Now,
necessarily.
for
underlying, I mean, the real price of gold.
That's
I
like
mean,
that's
because
what
there's
you mean
two,
when it physically delivered
What-
on
what-
that day.
give
There's
me
two
the price
kinds of
silver.
gold.
If I'll sell you my silver right now for $40 an ounce. The paper price is what, 27? That's nonsense. I'll give you for 40 because I know that it's in backwardation. The spot price, the real price is higher than the futures price. That's the real price. But that's not published because that's part of what we were talking about earlier about this, the relationships that, and it was, Alessio was talking about with the joblessness and all the macro economy, the problems there. One of the biggest problems is that we don't have a real legitimate price for gold. So now Bitcoin is the cash price.
Okay.
That's the supply and demand price. The derivatives that would come on top of Bitcoin would be the derivatives price.
It wouldn't be a bad thing to have 3-month futures on Bitcoin, options on futures on Bitcoin.
No, because I argue that derivatives are no problem at all as long as you have a cash price, which is the current price. That's the current supply and demand price of Bitcoin.
Spot price.
It's a crappy market. It's illiquid.
And guess what? That became a reality. Now you can trade options on these cryptocurrencies. And so again, that was that early discussion trying to understand these financial markets. And both Max and I had worked on Wall Street, and so we understood this phenomenon that was going to happen. And so I just want to make a funny aside. I actually invited Max and his wife Stacy to my Thanksgiving dinner here in London later that year. And at my Thanksgiving table, they traded a Bitcoin with one of my guests, actually a Goldman Sachs trader, for $1,000. And I still remember that I actually brokered a transaction at my dinner table. I didn't get a commission for that for some strange reason, but I'll never forget that moment. And you can check where Bitcoin is now. But these were the early days. This is back in 2013 when no one knew what was going to happen. But again, it's important to understand what people were thinking then because we can tell what's going to happen in the future. And I want to play next a video of me having an interview with John Collison. He's one of the founders of Stripe. Now, his company, Stripe, is now worth over $100 billion. But back in 2013, I asked John about this emerging technology, Bitcoin, that of course is one of the components of the DeFi space. And it was interesting to see John's take on what Bitcoin would become. In many ways, he was right, and in some ways he was also wrong. And it just goes to show you that even some of the brightest minds are unable to predict what's going to happen in this world of DeFi because it's decentralized and so much innovation happens away from the gatekeepers. So here's John Collison talking about his opinion of Bitcoin back in 2013.
Like, I gotta get your take on Bitcoin. It probably is a whole show, but
It's that's another, like, we have come up with ideas for so many whole shows here. But Bitcoin, the thing that I find really cool about, so one, Bitcoin is like genuinely like a technological breakthrough, and the idea that like the fully decentralized nature of it is actually kind of a phenomenal accomplishment, in that before Bitcoin, when everyone talks about virtual currencies, really, like these virtual currencies were just like balanced with some online, you have like Facebook balance, or you have, e-gold balance, or you have, all these services, you have paid them money and they give you a gift voucher. And so there was nothing like that special or interesting about it. Like, the thing that's phenomenal about Bitcoin is that you hold these Bitcoins, and like, so long as like there are people in the world who trade Bitcoins, you can trade them with them and no one can stop you trading with them. Eagle can go out of business or Facebook can go out of business, whereas in Bitcoin, it's not that anyone's going to go out of business. You have these, and you can trade them with people, and there are no intermediaries. And so that is legitimately a very major breakthrough. At the same time, Bitcoin is still pretty early in its history, and so I think there's a lot of questions around, if it ends up being so highly regulated that it's just not that useful, it's no better than credit cards, then I think that might stopper its growth a bit. But the thing that's really interesting for me actually about Bitcoin is the access component, where anyone, anywhere can get Bitcoins. And so if you're a site accepting Bitcoins on the web today, you can accept payments from someone in India or in like Germany, even if they don't have a credit card, so long as they have some way of getting Bitcoins. And so Bitcoin starts acting as this like universal connector, where like I get Bitcoins by some means. Maybe I pay my friend cash because he has Bitcoins, or maybe there's like a service in my country, like a financial service that turns it takes my local payment method, takes M-Pesa in Kenya, and gives them Bitcoins in return. And then I pay the service with Bitcoins, and then they in the back end convert it to dollars for their earnings. And so I don't think you'll see the word Bitcoin. If Bitcoin succeeds, I don't think you'll see the word Bitcoin around a lot. It'll just like silently be there, providing value. When you buy, anything, when you buy an iPhone, like foreign exchange was involved there because there was a Chinese company manufacturing it, and like money had to be converted into other currencies along the supply chain, but you don't think like, a new iPhone, foreign exchange. And so similarly, when you're doing an online payment, even if Bitcoin sits underneath it, I don't think you'll be like thinking about Bitcoin, or I don't think the word Bitcoin will even play there. You might just have it, what if, you were paying for something and like it was silently being converted to Bitcoin and then like converted back on the other end. I think that's in the success case of Bitcoin is like a world where no one really talks about Bitcoin.
Interesting. Wow, really interesting.
Interesting to hear John's thoughts on that, because he's already implying some of the future implications of that infrastructure, whereas an iPhone itself, you might not think, has all sorts of underlying financial instruments in the making of that piece. And so it's kind of a nod to what DeFi would soon become. 2 years later, I hosted Andreas Antonopoulos, which I used to call Bitcoin Jesus. He was one of the early adopters and early educators, and still is to this day, when it comes to all things crypto and DeFi. And I had many, many in-depth conversations with Andreas, hours and hours. And he was basically explaining this emerging technology, but we didn't know what it was going to become. Back then, there was just Bitcoin. It was basically a single crypto, and we couldn't see what it was going to become. And so I wanted to play this incredible clip from Andreas from back in 2015. And he's basically saying that if you look at Bitcoin, it's like looking at the internet as only email. Now, back in the early 90s, all the internet was email. And so we hadn't yet seen a browser. We didn't know what else it was. So if you had said, oh, email, that's not very exciting. But knowing that it could be so much more, we've watched the internet come into this grand piece that infects everything in our lives. And Andreas, even back then, was making this same comparison, that Bitcoin is email, and we are now talking about the internet of money. And so let me play this short clip of Andreas Antonopoulos.
The easiest way to explain it is this. If you are introduced to the internet in 1992, you may make the obvious mistake of assuming that email is the internet. And for a very long time, email and the internet are indistinguishable. It's not until 95 that the web comes along. And when you have two major applications on the platform, that allows you to see the platform. Until then, when there's only one application, you confuse the application and the platform. Bitcoin, the currency, is email. It's not the real invention. It's the first application of that invention. So Bitcoin as a whole is not just money for the internet. It's the internet of money. And currency is just the first application on the internet of money. And there is a whole set of applications that we can build on top of that. So when I read the paper, that's what I started realizing. This is a platform, and on top of it, you can build decentralized trust mechanisms. And currency is the obvious first application. And that alone is huge. Don't get me wrong, it's absolutely huge. But it's not even the beginning.
And you can already see there 6 years ago, Andreas says decentralized trust applications. He's not saying DeFi, but he's already saying, look, Brian, there's a lot more going on here, and there's a lot more that's going to happen in the future. Unfortunately, we were stuck in this myopic frame point, looking at the internet as if it was email, looking at DeFi as if it was just Bitcoin. And so we're watching the price of Bitcoin go up and down, and we're thinking, is this it? This is interesting, but this doesn't look like it's going to revolutionize finance or change my life. And yet Andreas was saying this was going to come. And I want to talk more about that shortly. The next thing I asked Andreas about was the price of Bitcoin. And we've always seen Bitcoin go up and go down. It goes skyrockets and then it crashes. And it has continued to do so from its existence. And Andreas explained this to me very well when I asked him about this. And he said, Brian, the price is the least important thing about Bitcoin. And I want you to think about that while you listen to this next clip of Andreas explaining exactly that point.
Because it's illogical, and more importantly, the price is the least relevant or interesting part of Bitcoin.
Can you explain that dichotomy to people? Because a lot of people would say, oh, that makes sense. But if you explain it a little bit better, you understand that it doesn't really make sense.
Well, think about it this way. In 2000, 90% of all internet startups went belly up. Almost $1 trillion of value was destroyed. And that was the internet's best year. Why?
Biggest year for growth.
Because that's when you started really seeing the web take off, and the utility and adoption all hit these inflection points with the real explosion in mobile, the beginning of smartphones and mobile internet. The web had finally taken hold and was beginning to get serious attention from business. And all of the first generation internet startups blew up. But what really happened is in the last 2 years of that bubble, the internet became entrenched in everybody's life. 2000 was simultaneously the internet's death and its rebirth. And so, but that is capitalism. That process of creative destruction and rebirth is the process that creates tremendous innovation and attention for things. Bitcoin has now gone through 4 bubbles like this. And in fact, everybody knows about the November 2013, went up to $1,000, crashed down to 230. We're at 270 now.
Yeah.
But what people don't know is that that's not the biggest bubble Bitcoin has ever had. 2 years before that, Bitcoin shot up to $30 and crashed to 25 cents. And in relative terms, that was a bigger climb and a much bigger drop. And it took almost 2 years to recover from that. And that was its second biggest bubble, because the really big bubble was when it went from 1/1000th of a penny to $1.
Right.
And at $1, that was the real birth of Bitcoin, because parity was almost considered unattainable. The dollar per Bitcoin was like a holy grail dream.
Right, because it started off as worth basically zero in an idea.
Absolutely. And the idea that you can bootstrap a global currency from nothing was in itself a ridiculous idea. So when you hit dollar parity, you've proven that you can bootstrap a global currency from nothing, and that's never happened before. To then say that the Bitcoin is dead because it's at 260, if you go back, the idea that it could ever reach 260 was insane. And by the way, we're not done. We've got at least 3 or 4 more bubbles.
Right.
Bitcoin is not going to now be steady, because every time attention shifts back, it blows another huge rise. Right. And because there's not enough to sustain that rise usually, it will then revert and crash down again. This is a roller coaster. It's going to continue to be a roller coaster for 3 or 4 years, just like the internet was. The big difference? The internet didn't have a single stock price that everyone could pay attention to. So it's both a blessing and a curse.
Right.
It's a blessing because as an investment vehicle, by attracting people to speculate on it, it's generated a lot of attention when it goes up. It generates a lot of investment in Bitcoin companies, and a lot of the early Bitcoin millionaires, if you like, were able to reinvest their Bitcoin into startups. But at the same time, double-edged sword, every time it crashes, someone writes an obituary for Bitcoin. They're like, Bitcoin is now dead. By the way, there's a site called bitcoinobituaries.com where you can read 150 obituaries written since 2010, all of which are not true. And I'm guaranteeing you there are going to be 2 to 3 more years of obituaries being written about Bitcoin.
And so there's Andreas talking about the 150 obituaries written saying Bitcoin is dead. And this is back in 2015. He's talking about Bitcoin prices of $1, of $260. Now we know where Bitcoin has gone from there, and we know there'll be many more obituaries written about Bitcoin. And his point is this: that doesn't matter. The price of the Bitcoin is not what matters. It's the adoption, and it's all the infrastructure that comes on the back of that. So we can expect much more price volatility in Bitcoin, but what we're talking about here is decentralized finance. This is the infrastructure, the building blocks of your future relationship with money. And let's be honest here, money and your relationship with money, it affects every single part of your life. Every single daily activity has some type of transaction to it. And if we can find a way to decentralize it, it's literally going to change the way that you live your life. And I want to play a couple more clips from you. I want to play one more from Andreas because he's got an incredible way of articulating how this stuff makes a difference to actually our humanity and our lives and our freedoms. And that's why I've been talking about cryptocurrencies and DeFi in some way, shape, or form for the past 8 years on London Real, because it's about freedom. And it's about how we can live our lives in a freer way, and how we can really control our assets and our money, as opposed to that being controlled by governments, by corporations, by all sorts of other laws and protocols that aren't always in our best interest. And so I want to play this last clip, and this is Andreas explaining what happens when you decentralize finance, because there's 6 billion people in the world right now that don't have access to finance. They aren't able to be able to pick up the phone and buy a stock or trade foreign exchange in Tokyo, or get a loan for their car. There are people out there that don't have any finance whatsoever. Imagine if we could give them access to these markets. Imagine if every single one of these billions of people could get microloans, could get insurance contracts, should be able to borrow, to lend, all of these things. It would cause a rate of growth that's almost hard to fathom. And this is Andreas going a bit deeper of how Bitcoin and DeFi is going to change the world.
It all goes back to this fundamental question. We live on a planet with 7.5 billion people, and 2 to 4 billion people are completely cut off from finance, and almost 5 to 6 billion people are cut off from international finance. What happens to the world economy when you bring 6 billion new people online, people who are productive but disconnected? What happens to their lives? What happens to poverty across the world when you can extend financial services, opportunity, credit, liquidity? Like, even if you're in a developed nation today, where can you invest your money? Nowhere. There is nothing you can invest money in today. The real estate market is a huge bubble. You can't buy cars because that's a huge bubble. Student loans are a bubble in the US now, right? There are no investment outlets because nothing is productive. What about if you're investing in 1 billion people who are in poverty? And I could take £1,000, split it into 1,000 microloans, and join together with 1 million investors to fund those microloans. What happens then? Direct, no banks, no intermediaries, no overheads, no costs. Direct funding, developed world to developing world, person to person. From my smartphone in Trafalgar Square to a Kenyan farmer's text messaging phone, which they can then use to buy seed, or stock up a small store, or start a sewing business, or buy a scooter and use it as a taxi service for a rural environment. That is where Bitcoin's possibility really is. The reason we cannot extend financial services to the rest of the world is not because they don't have money. It's not because they don't have productive potential. It's because banking as a series of brick and mortar, high overhead, high margin services is not scalable. but banking as an app backed by a network-based currency and system of trust scales enormously, and it can be extended into the most remote areas.
I love watching and listening to these videos because Andreas is predicting what has now happened in decentralized finance. And when he's talking about that Kenyan farmer, it's not that they don't have money, it's not that they don't have productive capacity, but they lack access to finance. And that stops them from growing at a rate that they could be. Imagine you or me walking down Trafalgar Square or Times Square in New York City and being able to do a microloan to some farmer there or some other individual in a rural environment and allow them to grow that capital at an incredible exponential rate without having the gatekeepers of the banking industry and the governments getting in our way. It's so exciting. And I feel so fortunate to be able to have been on the ground floor with so much of this education over the past 8 years of London Real, because this is ultimately about freedoms. And that's why I'm so excited to talk more about DeFi today and the next steps, and why it's so important that you get involved in this market now, because it is going to change your life, and you can be involved on the ground floor and be a part of the building of this infrastructure. And I want to play one last clip because I continued my journey of inquisition and questioning about all things cryptocurrency and DeFi related. And I want to share with you a clip of my good friend Tika Tiwari, who's been on London Real countless times, talking about all sorts of innovations happening in the DeFi sector and cryptocurrency sector. And this is Tika talking about his first exposure with something called Ethereum, which is now the whole basis of much of these smart contracts. All that's been built on the back of this Ethereum blockchain. And this is Tika talking about his first experiences and then how he knew this was going to be one of the major building blocks of DeFi in the future. One of the things I found really interesting that you said is that I think currently there's only about 35 million people that have invested in crypto.
Correct.
Whereas there's 500 million people, about 500 million people in the world that invest in the stock market. And if you can get all of those people to get access to the crypto markets, you can just see that's like a 15 times increase in investors, which could just mean more capital, more interest, bigger market caps.
Yeah, and so I want to bring this back to the altcoins, because the altcoins have been, the altcoin is any coin other than Bitcoin, and they've been underperforming Bitcoin.
And one of the first altcoins was Ethereum, and you were one of the first people to talk about that, right?
I was. It actually wasn't one of the first altcoins. There were others, but we can talk. We'll talk about Ethereum. So when I saw Ethereum launch, that's when I started doing a deep dive with insiders, and I started connecting with the people that actually put Ethereum together. And
Why are insiders important? Just for people that maybe haven't been in the industry, what does an insider tell you that, say, a white paper won't, or a website chat room won't tell you, you know?
So what an insider does, what I like to do, I'm very good at reading people, right? I can tell if somebody is full of crap or not very quickly.
In person.
In person, right? Which is a lot harder to do just watching a video. So I observe body language. I'll ask people extremely difficult, very direct questions. And if they hesitate or just don't answer or will shift the conversation, it just tells me a lot about, the underlying project. And so I also want to find out just how good are they technically, right? And I'm no programmer, but I know a lot of excellent programmers. And so I'll introduce, let's say, somebody that I've met, somebody that I know is a very smart person technically, and get their read. And so the reason why I talk to these insiders and the insight that they give me is on what's coming up in the code, just how really smart they are, how smart their team is, and who is going to be using the product. So I'll give you a prime example with Ethereum. With Ethereum, I started talking to people at different banks, and I started talking to some of the founders of Ethereum, and what I found out is that all the major banks were spinning up versions of Ethereum and testing Ethereum. They were building proof of concepts on Ethereum. Another industry insider that I spoke to was telling me anecdotally that she was at a hackathon event, and 85% of the programmers there were working on Ethereum, not Bitcoin. This is when Ethereum was at $6-7. And I said, look, you've got the smartest people in the world are choosing to build on Ethereum. You've got all the major banks are doing proof of concepts on Ethereum. I've spoke to the founder, one of the founders of Ethereum. It was $7. He said, "Listen, this is going to be $100 in under a year," and he explained to me why. And I said, "Okay, this is real." So I started doing again another deep dive, and then I actually wrote a report on Ethereum, and I put together a pricing model of why I thought Ethereum would go from $7 to around 350. And at the time, that was a 12 billion. I was saying that Ethereum was going to have more than a $30 billion market cap, when the market cap for the whole space was sub 12 billion, right? This was insane. And I put it in print and widely distributed this report. And people said, you're insane, you're a hype man, you're a shill, worse words that I can't use here.
But you've never been afraid to say your opinion when you believe in something.
No, if I believe it, I'm going to give you my real unvarnished opinion. I just don't care what other people think or say, because it's easy to be a critic, right? It doesn't take any talent to be a critic. It takes real work to think through an idea and see the world differently from everybody else, articulate it, and then put your reputation on the line and go popularize it, right? That's work. It's not easy to do. And you have to be willing to be unpopular, which most people aren't willing to take that social risk.
Imagine that, buying Ethereum at $7. If you check it today, it's in the thousands of dollars. But it just goes to show you that understanding the insiders back then, Tika could really see this was emerging and this was going to be the platform of choice. And it now is. It's one of the major pieces of infrastructure in DeFi going forward. And so that was my little bit of a trip through memory lane. Honestly, I got another 20 videos I could play for you with all the fascinating discussions I had about decentralized finance and crypto and all the players over the years. I mean, many of these people have gone on to become billionaires. And so it's one of the reasons that I want to talk to you today about DeFi, because over the upcoming months and years, I'm going to start having in-depth discussions with some of the greatest minds on the planet when it comes to DeFi. And we're going to help construct the future of finance. I want to give more people freedom, and I want to cut out the middleman. I want to get rid of these centralized financial institutions because I've worked in them, and I see the long-term damage they are doing to this world. And when you completely decentralize everything, and what we're seeing right now is that you get so much innovation so much faster. And I couldn't be more excited. I feel like 50 years of my life has been preparing me for this moment. And it might sound strange to you, but I studied technology, I studied science, I studied engineering. Then I studied finance. Then I put engineering, science, and finance together on Wall Street with some of the most complicated and innovative derivative trades of the time in the 1990s. Then I spoke with some of the pioneers when it comes to the cryptocurrency and DeFi space, and now I'm putting it all together. And that's why today I'm announcing the creation of our DeFi Academy, where you can learn this market from the very best in the business. And if you want, you can join me, and I'm going to teach you how to profit from the greatest dislocation of wealth in human history. This is an incredible time. I couldn't be more excited about it, but let me be clear. I am looking for a small, select group of people who want to become part of and actively participate in the upcoming DeFi revolution. I'm looking for serious individuals only with real net worth who want to help build this exciting financial infrastructure of the future. I'm looking for partners, collaborators, and colleagues who want to join forces and create real value and generational wealth. And if you're one of those people, there'll be a link below where you can go to londonreal.tv/DeFi to apply to be a part of this program. And let me be clear, my DeFi Academy is not for cryptocurrency day traders. It is not for people looking to get rich quick. That's not what this is. Go somewhere else if that's what you want. The DeFi Academy is not for meme coins and forum trolls. If that's what you do for fun, go somewhere else. And the DeFi Academy is not for blockchain fanboys and crypto academics. We are here for people who want to get into the arena and take action and get sweaty and get bloody and also get successful. And so again, I'm looking for a small group of people who want to invest themselves in the long term of this incredible technology, movement, and community. I'm looking for people who are willing to pull the trigger and really get in that arena. And you're going to know some great enthusiasm, some great devotions, and some great successes. And again, to be very clear, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, and I'm not promising overnight gains. Instead, my team and I are going to be building and investing in crucial parts of the DeFi digital financial infrastructure of the future. And sure, there's going to be some incredible opportunities along the way, but there's also going to be some very big risks. So I only want people that are interested in looking at a long-term perspective. Like I said, I'm going to dedicate the next 10 years of my life to this space, and I couldn't be more excited. So if you want to join my elite team, our first live course is called the DeFi Accelerator, and it's the keys to unlock a $9 trillion marketplace. It consists of a 4-week course, it's 4 modules, and it's by invitation only based on your application. And I'm doing this for the following 3 reasons. First of all, the insights and perspectives that I'm going to be giving you are going to be extremely valuable, and they cannot be found anywhere else in the world. I'm plugged into this information, and I see it in a way that no one else does. Second, I want this group to be small because I want to dedicate as much of my time to the individual as possible. And third, I only want people with real financial resources to become part of our long-term vision. So if you don't have the money, this is not the place for you. I'm looking for people that really want to invest in themselves and invest in the space. So let me tell you a little bit about our DeFi Accelerator. This is the course syllabus. So in Module 1, Week 1, I'm going to go through DeFi Explained. This is decoding the history of this complex marketplace. And from the Bitcoin creation back in 2009, all the way up to Ethereum 2.0 launching in 2021, I'm going to go through how did we get here, and why does this phenomenon represent the biggest dislocation of wealth in human history? Only by understanding our history can we be in a position to predict the future. So we're going to learn the basics of DeFi. We're going to talk about Bitcoin creation back in 2009. We're going to talk about Ethereum creation back in 2015. We're going to talk about the launch of Maker and smart contract evolution. We're going to talk about Ether Delta and the first DEX, which is a decentralized exchange. We're going to talk about the ICO boom and bust of 2017. A lot of us remember that. We're going to talk about the creation of the user-to-contract model. This was very important. We're going to talk about Uniswap and the creation of liquidity pools. We're going to talk about synthetics, Black Thursday, that was March 12th of 2020, and all of the implications about that. We're going to talk about compound and liquidity mining, the DeFi summer, Yearn and the emergence of yield farming, and of course, the future, Ethereum 2.0 and more. I'm going to break down my understanding of DeFi seen through 30 years of me in the banking and financial marketplace working on complex derivative transactions. Again, when I see this, I see myself. I was doing the same thing in a centralized finance way 30 years ago, but these rocket scientists are doing it in a DeFi way, and it's incredible what they're doing. I couldn't be more excited. So that's Week 1, Module 1. Next, we get to Week 2. This is get into the arena and place your bets. Now I'm going to show you how to efficiently buy your basics, Bitcoin, Ethereum, DAI, stablecoins, and altcoins. I'm going to show you how to bulletproof and understand your hot and cold storage systems and wallets. Next, we're going to understand centralized exchange and decentralized exchange and which marketplace suits you. And finally, you're going to execute your first swap across multiple platforms. I am all about action. All of my academy is about people taking action. The best way to learn a financial instrument is to trade the financial instrument. Don't sit on the sidelines. Don't sit in the forums. Put some of your money at stake, and you're going to learn these so much quicker. That's how I used to do it on Wall Street. That's what I did in the City of London, and that's what I'm going to do with you inside the DeFi Academy. Next is Week 3, Module 3. We're going to talk about DEXs, DApps, yield farming, and complex instruments. Now, you're going to finance your coins. We're going to talk about yield farming basics. Then, we're going to talk about complex money markets explained, understanding liquidity pools, smart contracts, and insurance. And then we're going to get into derivatives, my favorite part. This is the exciting future of DeFi. I'm talking about synthetic stocks, synthetic commodities, and how to price and trade options on DeFi. Again, I'm going to be sharing my long history of knowledge of pricing very complex derivative trades, not just call them put options, but digital options, all sorts of things that I learned how to price and trade back at MIT and back on my days on Wall Street. And of course, then we get to Week 4, Module 4, which is how to bet on the future of DeFi to position your portfolio for the 22nd century. Here, I'm going to be talking about how to manage risk, a game of controlling your emotion. I'm going to talk about how to place asymmetrical trades for long-term gains. I'm going to show you how to manage a portfolio of assets, how to set up and understand stop-loss orders, and how to continually educate yourself on new market phenomenon. And of course, the best is yet to come. So those are the 4 weeks, the 4 modules. And again, that's 8 hours of live calls, 2 live calls a week with me, but there's more. I'm throwing in my bonus, which is how to trade DeFi for long-term gains. And here, I'm going to share my positions and picks for the future. I'm going to explain how I manage risk, which really means how I manage my emotions. This is so missing right now in the current DeFi space. And finally, I'm going to teach the lessons that I learned from 30 years of trading the financial markets. I've seen everything. I've seen the crash. I lived through and traded through the '08 crash, and I've learned so many things. And when I look at the current DeFi and crypto markets, I see basics mistakes being made on a regular. And that's because nobody's ever really traded before and they don't understand how to control their emotions. Lastly, I'm going to bring you to be part of what I'm calling DeFi Investment Wizards. And this is only graduating members are going to qualify to join our invitation-only group that pools the resources and information from top players in the business. This is where the real opportunities are going to be and where our big infrastructure investments are going to be featured right in my DeFi Investment Wizards group. And so just to wrap it all up, the current offering inside the DeFi Academy of the DeFi Accelerator is this. It's those 4 modules. It's the bonus module. It's access to, of course, the Investment Wizards. It's 8 hours of live calls. It's personal coaching by me twice a week, every single week. It's exclusive access to our online e-learning platform with videos and workbooks. It's my triple-tiered accountability system that I've used for over 6 years teaching inside my academies. That means dedicated coaches, team leaders, community managers that work with you every single day. They're working with you inside our private Facebook group where you have to post assignments, you get feedback, and you exchange information with me, the team leaders, and the rest of the members of your classes. We have very limited numbers of spaces available, and this is an application-only basis. So you can click the link below or go to londonreal.tv/DeFi and be part of this incredible group. And let me be clear, this is not for everyone, and this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a place for people that want to invest long-term in the future of DeFi. And so again, the DeFi Accelerator is your only way to get access to the DeFi Wizards investment group. And I'm just going to tell you right now, this is an investment opportunity in your future. It's been discounted highly. This could easily go for over $10,000, but I'm offering it to our founding members for the incredible price of $2,497. Again, this is only for serious long-term players. You're going to be part of an elite team that invests in this space with me for the long term. And you can click on the link and submit your application now. But again, this will be happening very quickly. So get your application in fast because we're going to start our class very, very soon. So now at the end, I've got a question for you. And the question is simple. What are you going to do? And one of my favorite movies that I used to watch when I spent time at MIT and I used to watch when I worked on Wall Street was the movie Wall Street. And it's the classic that we know with Gordon Gekko and Bud Fox. And I remember so many of those important scenes from that movie. And one of the ones that always strikes me is there's a line that Bud Fox says to himself in the mirror before he walks into Gordon Gekko's office. And he looks in the mirror and he looks in his eyes and he says this: "Life all comes down to a few moments. This is one of them." And I would say the same thing about this moment right now. This will determine your future. This is a fork in the road. You can continue your life in your current reality of this centralized finance world, of you going to your bank to do your banking, of going to an ATM, of applying for a loan, or you can go the other way. You can dive deep into DeFi and you can be part of this incredible infrastructure build that's going to change your children's future, your grandchildren's future. This is your moment. You have a chance to take it right now. You will probably not get another opportunity like this ever. And again, my first class starts very quickly, and then I'm going to be working with a small group of people for the long run. So this is the opportunity, and it's happening right now. Matter of fact, if you're watching this video later, it's probably too late. And so I ask you this: will you seize this opportunity and join me and create the financial infrastructure of the future, I guarantee it's going to be the craziest ride of your life. If you look at my 10 years of London Real, doing the same thing when it comes to democratizing information, it's been one of the most fascinating journeys of my life. And I want to ask you, will you finally seize your opportunity? And will you finally create the generational wealth that you've been struggling to build your whole life? Because now is the chance to do it. You want to be in on the early stages of the DeFi. Imagine being on in the early stages of Google, of Amazon, of YouTube. This is where it all happens, and it's happening right now in DeFi. Again, I was shocked to see that this was happening right under my nose. This is going to be gone soon. And so the choice is yours. You can apply right now to be part of my elite team. We're going to go on an incredible adventure together. We are going to be the pioneers in this space. I guarantee our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren will talk about us one day because we changed the world with this DeFi infrastructure. And I can't wait to find a group of like-minded individuals that I can take with me on this incredible journey. It's going to be incredible. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to create amazing things. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows, but I guarantee net, this will be one of the best adventures that you ever come on. So, as I said, click the link below. Go right now to our DeFi Academy, submit your application, and join me on the very first DeFi Accelerator. This is for founding members only, for people that want to join me on this incredible adventure. This is your chance to be part of the future, to be part of a technology that I've never, ever seen grow so fast. I've never seen anything like this in my life, and I couldn't be more excited. And I will be dedicating the next 10 years of my life to DeFi, the DeFi space, DeFi Academy, and DeFi Real, which will be my regular broadcasts from this studio, talking to you and speaking with experts in this field. And I can't wait to go on this incredible adventure. So thank you so much. Please share this video with someone who needs it. Please leave me questions below about anything you have in this space, and I'll be trying to answer those over the coming weeks and coming months. And I look forward to you in that very first class inside the DeFi Academy, the DeFi Accelerator. We're going to have an incredible time learning together, discovering and investing and providing an incredible service to the world. So click the link below, submit your application, and I will see you on that very first live call on the DeFi Accelerator. Thank you very much.